We all know how it is. The Christmas season is upon us. We want to make homemade cards, but we're running out of time. Well, I'm here to tell you card making doesn't have to be complicated. In fact, it couldn't be easier, and I'm going to show you how in this video. So as a focal image, I am using napkins. These napkins come from Ninny's Napkins, and I'm going to use the iron-on decoupage technique. Again, super simple. I'll link the mini iron that I use or one like it. I'm going to use 6x6 card base. These come from the Crafter's Workshop. There is a link to their Shopify store below, and I'm going to use one of their 6x6 mixed media boards. It doesn't really matter what substrate you are doing it on, but the measurements may matter. So as I said, I'm going to use my mini iron. But to prepare it to do the iron decoupage thing, you need to put on a layer of fluid matte medium. That's my preferred liquid for this purpose. You can use Mod Podge. I don't like the smell of it, but it does work for the iron decoupage technique. So I've just made little pockets for my 6x6 cards or any of my card bases, and I just slide them in there. The pockets are just made out of copy paper. I slide it in there to keep the inside of the card from getting messy because, well, I am a messy crafter. So if you're like me, you may want to make a few of those. Just tape the edges, slide it in, and it works. So we are going to give each of the card fronts a generous coat of either Mod Podge or fluid matte medium. Stick to the matte finish. You want to be sure to get right to the edges because you want that napkin to adhere completely to that. You don't want any gaps. And I load up my brush and I give it a good layer, and I don't really worry if there's, kind of lines or streaks in it. I just want a nice even flow. So these are the napkins that I'm using. And I chose napkins where they're pretty much complete as they are. I love the image. And what I'm going to do is simply cut one of the panels. Now, every one of these napkins, you can make 4 cards from one napkin. This napkin's called Feet. And as I said, this come from Ninny's Napkins. There is a link in the description box. This one's called Three Wise Men, and I'm just cutting out one of the quadrants of each because I'm going to show you 4 different napkins, 4 different cards. Watercolor cards, love the colors of that one, and Christmas cowbells. Once you cut up the quadrant, you want to peel off the 2 excess plies. All the napkins from Ninny's Napkins have 2 excess plies. Some from the dollar store may only have 1, so you're going to have to figure that out. Peel off the backs. Save that. That comes in use. Now, I put my mini iron at the setting 2. FYI, you can use a regular iron, just not on steam. So I'm going to be careful to avoid the part that's branding on the napkin. There's usually one of the panels that has the name of the company that makes it, and I don't want that as part of my thing. I line it up so it completely covers the substrate, and then I put the iron in the middle and iron out. What is happening here is the heat of the iron is reactivating the adhesive, be it Mod Podge or mixed media, matte medium, or fluid matte medium, and fully adhering the napkin on that without wrinkles. I just check to make sure that I've got good adherence all the way, and if not, I'm just going to put it back under the parchment paper and re-iron it till I am sure that it is completely adhered. And then I'm going to set it aside and it will cool. So I'm just going to proceed. I'm doing this assembly line. So even if I was doing 4 of the same ones, I would cut out all the panels, iron it, do it kind of assembly line. And that is the most efficient way to do it, especially when you're under a time crunch. Line it up. There's a little bit of overlap on each side that we're going to take care of in a minute. Make sure that everything is perfectly adhered. Now we are going to cut off the excess, and you can use a file. This one I got from the Dollar Tree, or you can use these sanding blocks that you can get at the hardware store. I have seen them at Dollar Tree, but I find that the quality of those aren't as good. This works so well. You're just going to rub it, and it just cuts off the excess. Easy peasy. This, if you had a whole stack of them that were done, you could do in front of the TV, and then you could proceed to the next step. Now, because this is on a cardboard base and it's paper, it's a little bit finicky. You got to be a little bit gentle because you don't want to rip or gouge the card base. But it really was easy to do. You can use scissors, but for the minimum cost of these sanding blocks, I highly recommend using them. So I'm just going to proceed and do this with all my card. And there we have the cards. They're looking lovely already. So at a minimum, oh, one before we get there, now I want to seal the napkin on here. I know that I'm going to do some shading, some embellishing, and I just want to turn the cover into a non-porous surface. It's going to make the overpainting a little bit easier. It also allows me to erase any mistakes if they happen. So I am putting a coat of fluid matte medium. You could use clear gesso here as well. Now I'm using a softer brush. I'm loading up the brush so there's lots of the fluid matte medium on it, and I'm giving a good coat on top. Now, the odd time the napkin, once it gets wet, you may rip it. So you need to be gentle. So I've done all that, use the heat tool to dry it, and I'm ready to go to the next step. They are looking lovely as they are, and you could leave them as they are right now. But at a minimum, I'm going to suggest edging each of the cards. Now I'm using a Ranger blending foam and a coordinating color to the card. So this one with the gnome has a lot of brown in it. So I put brown paint into that blending foam, and I'm going around the edge. I'm opening up the card on the side so I don't get any of this brown paint on the back side of the card. I'm trying to be careful and mindful so the paint goes only where I want the paint. So this frames it. It just makes it look a whole lot more finished. So if you do nothing beyond this point, I recommend that you edge each of the cards with black or a coordinating color. Like this one, I use brown. Now I put on a little bit, and then I'm judging and saying, no, I want a little bit more overlap, a little bit more brown showing, and then I can add on. So start slow and then build it up to the consistency. You can use a makeup sponge. That will work. You just have to be a little bit more careful with the makeup sponge. So that one I chose brown. This one I am using black. There's a lot of black in it, but red would have been another choice that would work with this. But I have a plan for the red down the road, so I'm just edging it with black. And you can see how this finishes the card. Now this is the mixed media board, and I'm painting the sides black as well as giving this a frame of black. Now I put black on this star one. Good basic edging, shading color. I do go back, I come and change this because I thought there was something better. Now this one I put brown on, but I decided I'm going to add a little bit of black too. I love the two-tone look. So you can put the coordinating color and then black, and it just doubly looks good. Here I'm adding the teal. I go back and I put the teal over top and then a little bit of the black, and I just love how that looks. It just looks so much better with that. So play around with it. Now let's finish this star card. All I'm doing here is I grab my fine line applicator bottle. It's got gold paint that I've thinned down, and I'm just putting dots on some of the stars. Not even all of the stars. I'm just adding a little bit of bling, a little bit of detailing on it. And I'm being careful not to put my hand in any of the wet paint. This one, it's a holiday card. It's an all occasion card. You can put any kind of sentiment on it, or leave it blank. It's just a good all purpose card. And it's nice to have some of those in your card stash. Then I'm going around with the fine line applicator and making a sketchy gold line around it. How simple. And we're done this card. So this cow one, I wanted to add more red to it. I grabbed this line stencil and I'm just going to add a piece of tape so that I have a certain height, squares, and I'm going to stencil red paint through this to make a border for the card. Now, if you don't have a stencil like this, you can take a small paintbrush and just make those lines very easily as well. But I have this stencil and I like adding a border this way. Here I've used the red paint on a makeup sponge. And look how beautiful that just goes. Now you could do 2 sides, you could do all 4 sides. I've opted to do all 4 sides, but again, individual choice. As soon as I got this napkin, I loved it. And I could see it as a Christmas card. It's just perfect. The colors, everything. Now I just grabbed my fine line applicator. This has the gold paint. It was sitting there from the other one. And I'm just adding a gold dot in the middle of each of those red. Adds a little bling and really finishes off this card. We're going to come back and add a couple of extra details later on in the video. So these 3 kings, I am going to strengthen the color. So I'm grabbing some acrylic paint, I'm watering it down a little bit, and I'm making the colors a little brighter, a little bolder. And in the case of the green, I'm actually changing the shade of green. Some of it's a little too pastel for me. Now, do I want to overpaint every card? Probably not. So the first 2, I really did a minimal amount of work. But this one's on a mixed media board, or if it was a card for a very special person or somebody I know actually keeps their cards from year to year and, turns it into art or frames them, I will spend a little bit more time overpainting and adding details and embellishing it. So here I'm just adding a darker blue. I'm using Prussian blue on there. Green, I used Hooker's green with a little bit of Prussian blue. And I'm just using a small round brush, thinning the paint somewhat and giving it a wash. That's why I did the step where I sealed it with the fluid matte medium. That makes this goes on, it's not going to wick out into the dry napkin. So if you want to do overpainting or the shading around the edge, make sure you seal that card with the fluid matte medium like I showed you. Here I'm just making this a little bit deeper color. At the end, you're going to see. Now, my paint went outside of the lines, but I was able to grab a baby wipe and clean up my mess because I had sealed it with the fluid matte medium. So now I'm brightening the whites. I'm just taking some white gesso or white paint and just brightening the whites that are in each of the three kings. And that just always seems to add to the finished product. Changing the beard, making it a little bit darker. Now you can do as little or as much overpainting as you want. I'm making it a little brighter, adding some gold for the gifts. Grab some yellow oxide, and I'm just going to brighten up this star at the top. I'm adding the dots back in. This was kind of flecked with black, but when I added the white, it kind of got pushed back. So I'm just adding it in with my fine line applicator. I like that detail, so I kept it. And just dotting the eyes. This all makes it look a little bit more painterly, not just like a napkin that you've glued down. And then I'm using my angle brush and I'm adding a little bit of shading. And again, do you have to shade? No, I'm showing you the possibilities of what you can do. It does improve the end product. And remember, this one is a mixed media board that's going to be put on a plate rack for display purposes. It'll be a gift for someone. So I'm putting a little bit more effort into this one. Shading always brings out your focal image. Just adds so much. Now I've decided to add a little extra something, so I grab my glossy accents and I'm just dotting all these stars from the background. This is going to make them shine. And then I'm just filling in the entire star and star trail. Now I am looking back right now, I'm thinking I could have used my letter stamps and stamped the word peace or seek or love in the tail of this star before I put the glossy accents on. And I could do that next time. Here I'm going to do a little bit of overpainting. I grabbed burnt sienna and I'm just brightening up the hat. The shoes, there's the stick, I'm adding brown, I'm adding some brightening up the yellows in the lanterns. Just brightening up the colors. I'm not overthinking it. I'm not being precise at all. Overpainting is a little bit scary when you start, but the more you do, the better you get at it. And remember, you can do as much or as little. I could have just done the hat and the lanterns, and that would have been fine. I can do all of it. But it really adds to it. And once you figure out what you're going to do, if I was doing 4 of these and you're doing it kind of assembly line, it'll even go quicker. Here I'm just adding white. I've got my liner brush and I'm just flicking, making it look like the beard is going past those points. Again, making this whole thing look a whole lot more painterly. Brightening up the white part of the focal image. Now, there were a few hearts in his hat, so I am adding more of those just with my brush. I'm just making hearts. I add way more than the original napkin have, but I absolutely love this bright white on the burnt sienna. It's just really made this whole come alive. Just work your way down. Look at it. Are you done? Are you done? Now I paint the trees green. I've just put a couple colors of green right on top of everything. And then I grab my liner brush and white paint and I put the snow back on. But the trees have a little bit more of a presence than they did. I absolutely love how this one turned out. Then I grab my fine line applicator, the black, and I'm just putting a sketchy line all the way around, just to frame it further. And then I decide I want some gold on this, so I'm going to grab my fan brush and splatter gold. So there are the four cards, and there's not a lot of room for sentiments, but you can go on to Pinterest, find sentiments. If I was doing this as an art journal page, the wise men, I would add some sentiments. I'll save that for next time when I do it an art journal page. But let's just put a sentiment on this one. And I'm going to put the sentiment, I cut out a whole bunch, printed them off because, I might do an art journal page with it or more cards. And I'm going to use the one, Holy Cow, It's Christmas. So you can leave it without sentiments. There's not a whole lot of room, or put some small sentiment, or you could put the sentiment inside the card. So I've cut this off and then I'm just playing around with the placement. I also use the glossy accents here and I did his eyes so they are shiny and his bell. Her bell, I guess. I grab my Pigma pen and I'm just outlining a sketchy black line around it. Although my pen died, it ended up in the garbage. And I'm just outlining the sentiment as well. So here is the finished one, and here is the napkin. You can see how it's been brightened and it's a little bolder. Love it. Love how the brown, the edging of this one got a whole seam. And you could put a sentiment, gnome for the holidays. This star one, very simple, not a lot of work, good all occasion kind of card to have in your stash. The cow one, I love the red and gold border. It just beefed it up. But really, how simple could that be? Minimum of work, maximum effect. The three wise men, really boldening those colors, making them stand out. You can see the difference. Love it. I think I might do on an art journal page. You could cut out each of the individual ones and build a scene, maybe with something from another napkin. And there are the finished napkins. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. I hope it's given you hope that you can get those holiday cards made without having a lot of time. Until next time, go get creative.